over to you, Keelan. In terms of maybe on the private client side, I know you have a lot of clients based across Africa, but a lot based in South Africa as well. What are they looking for when they're trying to, find solutions for estate planning, succession planning?
Yeah, so Mauritius has always been an attractive location for South Africans to retire to or to move to. And it's, apart from all the benefits we mentioned in terms of building out a business for Africa, some of the key uh, tax benefits for individuals are there's no estate duty, there's no donations tax, and there's no capital gains tax. So they're very significant benefits for a person who's coming close to retirement or a person who owns their own business. So we've had a lot of business owners from South Africa and from Africa move to Mauritius, and particularly where their business is focused on Africa, they often keep running the South African leg via a South African PTY entity, but then they'll run the African operations from a Mauritian holding company. And that can quite significantly improve the shareholder wealth, both in terms of the corporate tax, but also in terms of the ultimate estate duty and capital gains tax if the shareholder ever sells the business.
Okay. Can I just ask you to continue on that? Because I know that a lot of South Africans are in trading businesses,
Yep.
maybe import, export. How is the use of Mauritius beneficial for them?
Yeah, so this is very popular at the moment. A lot of our clients are providing some sort of good or service with good across Africa,
Yeah.
and they're typically importing the product and then on selling it to Africa. So oftentimes they've looked at setting up a entity in Mauritius, so it's got this special trading import-export
Yes.
license, very beneficial 3% regime. So the goods can still flow, let's say, from China to South Africa or to wherever their customers are across Africa. In Mauritius, they only pay 3% on the delta, so basically their sales revenues. And they can avail, and because the goods don't have to come to Mauritius, it doesn't impact the customs or excise or anything.
Sure.
And then often that's coupled with having a procurement or marketing or logistics or services element in Mauritius as well, run by a couple of people here, so that the African operations are supported from here. And that can that can unlock very substantial tax benefits. And if that operation were done in South Africa, for instance, they would be paying 27% corporate tax versus 3% with the climate change levy add-on and the additional 2%. So let's say an effective 7%. But then if you can compare that to 27% in South Africa, plus the 20% dividend withholding tax that applies in South Africa, it's quite an attractive alternative.
Sure.
And it's also not done only for tax purposes, because there can be good exchange control and currency benefits through supporting your African client base from Mauritius rather than South Africa.
Maybe treasury management,
Exactly.
cash management for the whole of the group.
Yeah.
Even the perks of maybe getting some occupational permits and having people transition and use Mauritius as a base or use other jurisdictions as a base.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of companies also providing services across Africa, like, for instance, services to big mining companies, whether it's health services for their staff, or repair of the mining equipment, or quantity surveying, and they can have the personnel based in Mauritius and shipped in and out from Mauritius rather than South Africa. And again, that can be easier in terms of payments and
Exactly.
for operating in hard currency, as well as giving tax benefits. And what's nice about both of those types of business, they're both building substance in Mauritius. So it's not just like what Robin was talking about, the kind of volcano island, nothing happens here. It's actually properly running the business from here, because it makes more sense from a business perspective, and the tax benefits are a nice sweetener.
It's true. It's true. I mean, we're seeing people increasingly ask for more about payroll, but also about EBTs.
Yeah.
To actually benefit those employees they have across the continent in other jurisdictions. How can they set up an EBT or an ESOP here in Mauritius.
Absolutely.
In addition to the holding or the actual trading company.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. So maybe back over to you, please, Robin. In terms of everything that's been said so far, do you see that, say, some of your US investors recognize Mauritius as a gateway to Africa? And if so, what are the key things that they're looking for if they've got questions?
Well, great question, because I mean it ties up with your previous question of how robust is our legal system. When you talk of Mauritian legal system, so you've got, yes, the domestic system, but then you've got our network of treaties which becomes incorporated into our laws. Mauritius has been traditionally known for its very rich network of DTAs, double taxation agreements, but that is now second to its network of investment protection treaties. Now, people know that as BITs, bilateral investment treaties. We call it IPPAs, investment promotion and protection agreements. We've got a whole series of IPPAs with African countries signed and ratified. We've got a bunch more awaiting ratification. We've got, we are a founding member of the AFCFTA, which is your equivalent to the Treaty of Rome. For the EU, this is our AU founding treaty for trade, freedom of trade and investment. AFCFTA signed by every African country, 55 countries, and is been ratified by 48 of them. Now, then Mauritius, you've got the COMESA treaty with reinforced investment protection. So what I'm trying to tell you is, when you look at this global regime of national and international law that Mauritius offers, you've got a growing number of American institutional investors coming to Mauritius before going to Africa, because they realize that unless they have treaty protection, their investment will be at risk. It's always at risk after a change of regime. Regime changes occur worldwide. When we look at Africa in particular, if you want to reinforce your investment, then you go for Mauritius. I mean, last week you heard in Guinea they nationalized aluminium, and there's the UAE company Emirates Global Aluminium that lost its license, and the license and all the assets were transferred to a state-owned company. 2 months ago, in Niger, we all know the French company Areva, specialist in nuclear development, now known as Orano. Well, Orano, their assets were nationalized. With their investment in Somalia uranium was nationalized on a simple dispute of fairness of share of profits. So you have a regime that perceives your share of profit as unreasonable, nationalized. And this is a French state-owned company investor. So that's in Niger, June 2025. Burkina Faso, same thing. You are aware of the issues with Lilium and with Endeavour Mining. This is in the gold mining sector, where their assets and their licenses were revoked and transferred towards state-owned company. Last example I'll give you will be Mali. Barrick Gold and what was the other one? Barrick Gold and Resolute Mining. Mali made changes to their mining code, and foreign investors who were trying to adapt to the amendment, well, the foreign expats, senior executives of these investors, were detained until they were forced to accept
Crazy situation.
It's a crazy situation.
Yeah.
So all these should show you that if you want to reinforce and ring fence your protection into Africa, uh, you cannot just go with the normal protection. You need treaty protection. The same thing would apply in America. The same thing would
Of course.
apply,
Yeah.
Canadians into America, Americans into Canada, into Brazil. Treaty protection worldwide
Yeah.
is becoming a key protection, and Africa is no exception to that.
Thank you. Thanks for giving the examples of these IPPAs, how important they are.
Yeah.
I think many people would never have heard of them. They think purely about the DTA. I always argue, as you mentioned, Keeling, the DTA in itself isn't the reason to actually make an investment. You know, it makes sense, yes, but it's not the leader. It's something which is a benefit and a bonus afterwards. But the IPPAs, I think, are critical. To have the IPPA in place really shows protection before anything can go wrong.
I mean, in today's world where you cannot predict, look at America. It has nothing to do with Africa. Look, and
Yes.
it's unpredictability. So if this is the world in which we operate today, you need to arm yourself with a
Exactly.
lot of protection.
Obviously, there's insurance you can take out, political risk insurance as well. But that's obviously another way to actually protect yourself. Coming back to you, Robin, in terms of what are the sectors that you're seeing mainly from your US investors? Is it solely mining, or are there other actual sectors that they're looking to invest into in Africa?
Big time infrastructure,
Right.
agriculture, infrastructure, and mining, rare resources mining for mining, but infrastructure, in your road, your railway, your ports and airports, energy, renewable energy, big time. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. And yourself, Keelan, are you seeing anything
All
slightly
the all
different
the
to that?
same, yeah.
Same?
And I mean, I've been working in Africa now for 20 years, and I've I've been waiting for it to boom, and there's always an issue, but I am seeing real interest now. I think since COVID, that kind
Yeah.
of put a dampener on the developing markets. But yeah, so as Robin says, agriculture, logistics, transport, infrastructure, fintech as well. We're seeing a lot of outbound from
Yes.
Africa, which I personally love. So African entrepreneurs either going Pan-African or global. Mining is big still, and particularly with a lot of new rare metals and transitional metals linked
Yes.
to the electric car
Yeah.
market. And of course, there's some very interesting new energy findings
Yes.
in Namibia and Uganda in particular. And when they happen, there's both the energy companies, but there's also all the ancillary businesses that come and support them.
Exactly.
So lots of interesting stuff happening in Africa. And I am hopeful there'll be more growth over the next decade than we've seen in the last one.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, certainly we're seeing more energy as well.
Yep.
In addition to all the others that you've already mentioned. But I think trading, energy, solar renewables, hydro, new technology coming from Europe being deployed across the continent into different countries, and also construction.
Yep.
Construction is just continuous, whether it's construction of hospitals, of schools, real estate development, hotels. We've seen a big interest of late in the tourism sector right across the continent. I think that's something which is still unknown. How will tourism develop in Africa? I do think that's going to come much later, but I think there's some interesting opportunities for that to grow very well across sub-Saharan Africa, as well as already growing in North Africa.
Yeah.
In terms of what does Mauritius do in comparison to other jurisdictions? I mean, you're both international players. You have offices across the world. How do you see that Mauritius operates differently for the benefit of its clients? Is it quicker? Is it easier? Is it is it on the banking side? Is it on the regulation side? Is it?
I have mixed feelings about this.
Okay.
Mixed feelings because I think we've got all the fundamentals of doing business well.
Okay.
Uh, but I think in terms of conservativeness, I'll explain myself. Yes, we are all aligned on AML, CFT, on compliance. Mauritius needs to be a little bit more commercial, have a commercial approach. I think we take, and I hope I'm not misconstrued. I think we take AML CFT a little bit too seriously. Let me explain. AML CFT is supposed to be there and protect. But we cannot be overzealous. We cannot be overzealous in our enforcement of AML CFT. It will defeat the purpose because you don't want to reach a place in life where AML CFT of what? There's no investment.
Exactly.
So I'm very happy to see the Honorable Minister for Financial Services. She's been keeping saying that now. Guys, let's be more commercial in our interpretations. So I think we've done a marvelous job for our compliance professionals to educate themselves, to train themselves.
Yes.
And there's great coordination among all the agencies between public and private sectors. Great. Now I think we need to train them how to be commercial in the interpretation of the compliance laws. So, answering your question, I think we're doing very well in terms of evolving evolving and aligning ourselves with how the world is developing. I mean, I'll tell you. I mean, you take Mindex, for example.
Yes.
This is the only virtual exchange with several arrangements with American exchanges and Asian exchanges. And when you look at how Americans react to Mindex, I mean, you see how far we've come. But I think we need to be a little bit more commercial in our application for of our compliance laws.
I think that's going to be a welcome, understanding from the audience. I think sometimes Mauritius is seen as being over-regulated. I've had that.
Yes, there's an
as-
overreach. There's an overreach,
overreach,
but I'm glad that the authorities realize it and they're tackling it.
I think we have to balance as well the fact that, putting Mauritius forward as a platform for Africa, there's a certain level of responsibility to ensure that all the funds moving in or out of the jurisdiction are clean funds. That's an obvious responsibility and also an actual benefit for the African counterparts, because it means that when they are trading out of the continent with the rest of the world can then almost say, well, okay, it's gone through Mauritius, it's accepted. We have many clients who use Mauritius for their trusts, yet their portfolios are actually managed with some very well-known global investment managers out of the US, out of Europe. But because it's actually come through an actual Mauritian vehicle, it's almost as if, you've done the checks, you know the source of funds. Of course, they'll do them again, but we have all the documentation ready for them. They haven't got to ask some very strange questions about, well, really, how did that wealth, how was that wealth created?
Yeah.
We've already gone through that work for them. That makes it easier, and I think that puts Mauritius much more in a reputable manner, from the rest of the world.
I think those regulations are going to relax globally a little bit, or let me not say relax, just be treated more sensibly. I mean, when Mauritius was put on the FATF grey list, I personally thought that was really unfair and unexpected. And I think this is still Mauritius's effort to
overcome that.
Yeah,
maybe too much.
Yeah, and that's the way it is. You sort of overcompensate, and now I think it will settle down. But what people need to understand, in particular private clients, is that is the world nowadays. Every country where you want to set up a trust or a bank account or an offshore entity, there is KYC, there is AML, there is common reporting standards. That is the new world order. So I certainly don't think Mauritius is any more bureaucratic or slow than other equivalent jurisdictions.
Thank you. I suppose, as a tax advisor then, what would you say are some of the strategic decisions for using Mauritius over and above any other jurisdiction?
Well, I would say again, so we basically do tax structure and transfer pricing. And a lot of structure looks at what is the long term intention of what you're trying to build. And often with a privately owned business, they're looking at an ultimate sale or listing. And then we would want to look at who do you want to sell to, who do you want to get funding from, where do you want to list. And that will often dictate where you have your holding company.
Right.
And one of the benefits of Mauritius is that is African. So if people are building a Pan-African business, it's nice to have an African topco. However, if you're wanting to operate into Europe and get sold eventually to Google, maybe a Mauritian topco wouldn't be the best. So we always look at the long-term strategy. But in terms of tax benefits, whether to choose Mauritius over another equivalent jurisdiction, we look at, I know double taxation agreements aren't the most important, but they are important. Mauritius has got some of the best treaties with Africa, probably similar to South Africa and Dubai. South Africa, we would not recommend as a top holding company because of high dividend withholding tax, exchange controls, obligations to use the ZAR, which is a more volatile currency, and obviously high taxes. So if you're looking at Mauritius or Dubai, generally we would recommend Mauritius over Dubai. And again, this is just to give broad generalizations. A couple of reasons. One is that Mauritius is really focused on Africa. Mauritius sells, what it wants to sell itself is a gateway into Africa.
Yes.
Dubai is a bit more kind of doing all things for all men. So Mauritius is very, very African focused, and I think is more well known to the African countries than Dubai. Banking is also easier here, in my view, than Dubai for African transactions, and also for privately owned African businesses, so outbound, we often would recommend they have a trust over their holding company.
Yes.
And it's much easier to do that with a Mauritian entity than a Dubai entity, because just trusts are less well known in Dubai. So no criticism at all to Dubai, but generally, if we're looking at, so Mauritius is by no means the default recommendation for a holdco, but if you've got a Pan-African business and either you're African coming out or you're international coming in, often Mauritius will be the top recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Robin, over to yourself. But I suppose my next question comes, sometimes I'm asked about, what banks are actually present in Mauritius? Does it have enough international banks in the jurisdiction? We've got some very well-known banks here. We're very fortunate that one of the banks here has just recently been acquired by a Pan-African bank as well, which I think is a good thing because it enables Mauritius to be seen really as a Pan-African player and actually gives justification to why Mauritius should be seen as a platform for Africa. This bank, I won't mention for obvious reasons, but does have a presence in the UK as well. But even some of the other players that we have here are very international in Asia, across Europe, in Africa. But in terms of the risks, I mean, other than the benefits of being able to raise capital here, perhaps, what are some of the reputational risks that associated with any offshore jurisdiction do you see that Mauritius maybe has a different view on how it can be overcome?
Well, I would think the normal AML CFT risks, you don't want your jurisdictions to be used for money laundering and financing of terrorism, and I think we've taken all the steps to safeguard ourselves against this. Again,
how have you seen Mauritius position itself against potentially going back on the grey list? I know Keelan's talked about it. We've come off it, but do you see that we've had enough rules in place now to ensure that we never go back on the grey list?
Oh yes, I think there were high level commitment made by Mauritius towards to the FATF. And so whether it's the FATF 2012 recommendations, whether it's the FATF action plan, Mauritius keeps complying with them and keeps being ahead of the game. Lots of trainings, lots of hiring of experts. I mean, training today is mandatory for all financial services companies in Mauritius. So we've gone from zero training, zero education to now overtraining, and all banks, all everywhere. So I would say that Mauritius has taken it very seriously. Mauritius keeps and you know there's monitoring, constant monitoring. As I told you earlier, recommendation two: agencies have to talk to each other. We're doing that.
Right.
We need to be aligned to evolution in business. Virtual asset is an example.
Yep.
We have that now. People are being trained into ensuring that virtual assets are not being used for the purpose of AML, of money laundering and financing of terrorism. We all know what are the risks there, so we're trying to protect ourselves against this. I think with how we are now equipped, Mauritius, I don't see any other I don't see any risk of us being relisted anymore, provided we keep at it. Now, you know, the emphasis from FATF has always been pragmatism.
Yes.
I mean, you need to be pragmatic. You need to look at what companies are doing on a day-to-day basis. So we are being very pragmatic. There's nothing academic in what's happening in Mauritius.
Thank you. Thank you. I think because it is asked, I mean, it is a question that's posed to me on a number of occasions, because they see potential investors see that some other African countries do find themselves on that list.
Yeah.
Still today, after many years, and they said, well, actually, Mauritius came off in 2 years. Was that too quick? You've mentioned that it shouldn't have been on there in the first place. I agree with that. But I think it's actually good to hear that a lot of measures have been put in place to ensure that Mauritius doesn't go back
Oh,
on that
lots of
direction.
legislative reforms, lots of monitoring and enforcement. No. We've taken it very seriously.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think Mauritius, so I really think Mauritius should never have been put on it. You'll remember Mauritius was first put on the EU Commission's tax grey list in 2017 for perceived weaknesses in AML. Then it gave back an action plan to correct those, which led to it coming off in 2019. But before that action plan had been reviewed by FATF, because it's also relevant to them, they put Mauritius on the FATF grey listing, which then, of course, led to us being put on the other EU grey listing. So to me, I do think it was very unfair, but Mauritius's response to it shows how different they are to the other guys who are on that list. Like, that was a number one priority for the government.
During COVID as well.
During COVID, they were completely committed to getting off it. So the fact that we took us less than 2 years to get off that list, that's not, too soon. It was because I believe that it was unfair in the first place, but they really committed, they really prioritized it. And I mean, if we look at, South Africa's on the grey list now, I think that will be quite some time before it gets off.
It's I mean, Denton's as a law firm, we've got a huge team of compliance people looking at of course we do offer compliance services to clients, but most of the team dedicated to our own onboarding.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of matters that we refuse to take because of AML CFT rules.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I mean, we have, I think over the past 3 years, we've had 2 on-site inspections by the FIU. They come, they look at all your files, and they look at whether your system is in place to detect any problem. I can tell you, it's being taken very seriously in Mauritius. Very seriously.
And it is such a difficult tightrope to walk, trying to keep on the right side of all of these regulations, which are drafted by civil servants, not exactly by
Not
dynamic
practitioners.
business leaders. And so to keep on the right side of those, but also to be pragmatic and business friendly and open for business to clients. And I personally think that Mauritius has done a very good job of keeping that balance in check. But it's difficult. And then when clients complain about how long it takes to, do their KYC, that is a fact of life nowadays in every country that wants to remain compliant with these global oversight bodies, which, for good or for ill, and I'm never in favor of too much bureaucracy, they're the guys who rule these regs.
I'll give you a simple example. Lawyers are not allowed to act as escrow agent. Before, we used to do that all the time.
Yeah.
We have something called client's account.
Exactly.
But today, the FIU and the local legislation tells us, unless we are involved in the underlying business, let's say buyer is selling to seller and we are writing the transaction, then we could offer escrow services. But if we have no connection with the transaction, we cannot. That shows you where we've gone into our monitoring and enforcement of AML/CFT.
Thank you. Question for you, Keelan, just coming back to the fintech side of things that you mentioned earlier. How do you see Mauritius embracing digital transformation in financial services?
So this is another example where I think Mauritius is really open to learning, and it is trying to hear from practitioners in the field and from global experts on how best to do this. It is a difficult area, like crypto, fintech, any of that is difficult because the rest of the world is still trying to figure out how best to put regulations in place. But I think there's been a number of initiatives to improve, to basically digitize tax and other financial processes in Mauritius, including, for instance, e-invoicing. There have been a number of very welcome sandbox type initiatives from the FSC, I think was one, and what was the other one?
At EDB?
Yes, the EDB.
It was FSPA before.
Yes, and they're basically providing trial basis to run fintech type assets to help businesses see if they would work and give them the regulations needed. So I think it's still, I don't want to say in the infancy stage, but it's still in the exploration stage. But there's a lot of licenses also being given in this space. So I think it's very clear that Mauritius is open to it and is open to exploring how it can be a hub for, fintech, intangible assets, crypto, all of that, while also being very careful to keep on the right side of, wherever the global regulation of particularly crypto and other intangible assets will fall.
Okay. I'd like to ask you both the same question next, but I'll start with you, Robin. In terms of what do you see as the trends shaping the future direction of Mauritius? So Mauritius, not 2030, but 2050.
I mean, a trend shaping Mauritius.
How would you imagine, given where Mauritius has been from the 1990s, when as a sector, financial services came into its own, where it is today, 2025, where do you think it could be? Let's go further out, because all governments are talking 2030, but let's go a bit further. 2050, where would you like to see Mauritius positioned?
I think Mauritius...
It's a bit of a blue sky question, I know, but I think for the audience's sake, it'd be interesting to hear.
Yeah, well, I think Mauritius is becoming the Washington, D.C., New York of Africa. Because Mauritius is a founding member of a lot of African treaties. So, and a lot have been negotiated and executed and signed in Mauritius. Mauritian officials run a lot of continental African organizations out of Mauritius. Mauritius is number one on a lot of indices in Africa. So from a regulatory and governmental point of view, Mauritius is there. And then you've got the financial center part of it. I mean, there's no place in Africa like Mauritius. Bilingual, a sophisticated workforce, a great, I mean, no barrier to the continent. More and more regional headquarters being set up here. I think we are becoming what Singapore is to Asia. Mauritius is firmly on the way for Africa, and this is where we're going.
Let me push you a bit further, because other countries in Africa have seen what Mauritius has become. Some are slightly envious of what Mauritius has become, such a small jurisdiction, 2,000 square kilometers. Why can't we be a gateway to Africa as well? Given they're also going to be developing in their economies, the jobs, the talent in their own countries, what should Mauritius be thinking about and doing to ensure that it retains its position today and grows even more to really secure what you just said as being that place, that Washington DC, New York for Africa?
I think it's quite simple. I mean, nobody can compete with Mauritius. Everybody talk about Rwanda and so on. No way. We are light years ahead of them. We need to keep focused on education. We need to keep focused on getting our legal framework always evolved and aligned. We need to stay good on political stability, law and order. These are fundamentals. Law and order, rule of law. We've got no corruption in the judiciary system. It's like it's law and order and education. If we got that under control, nobody will touch us.
I will come back to you, but before I do, the same question to you, Keelan.
For me, it's all about Africa. So as I say, I've been working 20 years in Africa, and every year saying, no, Africa's going to boom, Africa's going to boom. And my father worked in Africa for about 50 years, and he's saying that he's still waiting for the Africa boom to come. But I am hoping by 2050, Africa is going to be much more successful and much wealthier than it is today. I think we're seeing very good inroads. And to me, you know, a rising tide rises all ships. So if Mauritius is at the moment, for me, the kind of logical gateway to Africa, the logical sort of holding pattern location for Africa. So if Africa booms, as I hope it will, that's going to be in Mauritius's interest, and vice versa. So I would like to see Mauritius partner a bit more with key African countries.
Okay.
There is, unfortunately, in some African countries, a bit of a negative perception towards Mauritius, that, you know, a lot of structures are set up there just to pay less tax in the African countries, which harks back to the older days of thinking about offshore tax locations. And I think, again, the antidote to that is substance. We're not talking about a postbox in Mauritius to pretend to run your African subsidiaries. We're talking about real partnership between what happens in Mauritius to improve what you're doing in Africa and vice versa. So I would like to see more double taxation agreements. I mean, African countries are generally a bit skeptical of double taxation agreements. I mean, there's a broad generalization. So there's less DTAs across Africa than in most of the world. I'd like to see more. I'd like to see more kind of partnership arrangements, say with Kenya. I think Kenya has been quite critical of Mauritius unfairly. I think I would love to see some sort of delegation from Mauritius to try and you know, improve relationships there. There's that can be a very good trade corridor, Mauritius to Kenya, Mauritius to Nigeria. I think there's very good scope for. So I think Mauritius's magic position is that it is in Africa, but it's got none of the key risks that you
Other
typically
African
have for
countries
doing.
have.
So we need to maintain that, but I think we
Go
also
a bit further.
need to make Mauritius more African and strengthen those links for the success of both.
Before I come back to Robin, you just touched upon something there about more DTAs.
Yeah.
I've been asked the question, should we be focusing more on the African Continental Free Trade Agreement rather than more DTAs?
Yeah, well, that's so the African Free Trade Agreement is, for me, so sad. It's so sad that it is harder and more expensive to transport wheat from South Africa to Nigeria than it is from Brazil to Nigeria. So I am fully in support of improving that free trade agreement, and I think it would be great for Mauritius to get involved in those type of Pan-African initiatives. So yes, absolutely. I think we're not really...
Mauritius has signed up for it, hasn't it?
Yes, but to be more involved in kind of promoting it, expanding
Pushing it forward.
Yeah, because it has been signed up by many countries, but not much has really happened.
Right.
And in tandem with all of the projects we're seeing on infrastructure, on logistics, on transport, there's a massive opportunity for intra-African trade.
Okay.
And I believe that there's a lot Mauritius can bring to the table to help the, to kind of guide some of the African countries in the benefits of being more outward looking rather than in being kind of defensive, which many of them are. So yeah, I'm always very optimistic, and I do think Mauritius has got very special skills it can bring to play, and to unlock some efficiencies and blocks, particularly to do with the ease of doing business across Africa.
Yeah. Well, that leads me on to my next question, and I will come back to you, because Robin, you mentioned earlier about education. Education has been the bedrock of the growth of Mauritius since independence. I think I was always told as a joke that parents at the time gave their children choices. They gave them options: become an accountant or become a lawyer. But those were the options. Obviously, the economies have actually moved on and developed since then, and they're very much stable careers here in Mauritius. And thanks to those two career paths, Mauritius is where it is today. But going back to this question of the future in 2050, as an example, what other sectors, what other career paths do you see Mauritius could be growing into, given its land mass, given its present skills? Where should it be looking to grow into to be able to then become an actual centre of talent for the rest of Africa, to grow with Africa?
I think many of the traditional sets of skills will become obsolete, and we need to keep in mind the arrival of AI as well. So I think where Mauritius has a lot to improve is in terms of its oceanic resources. The island has got to do a better job managing its vast marine resources.
2 million square kilometers of ocean.
Huge,
is
huge.
in control of.
Yes. So this will become a pillar for Mauritius very soon. So that's definitely one area. And second area is Mauritius. Following up on what Caoilfhionn said, Mauritius needs to Africanize itself. Its population needs to be much more fluent in African culture, African economies, because what will happen is, companies coming from Mauritius will expect this, because this is substance. How can we be going into Niger or Burkina Faso without knowing what are they about? I mean, we need to know their culture, their history, their economies. So Mauritius, I mean, when I was in high school, I was learning English history. Okay, great. I mean, how is that helping me today? We should be teaching African history, African culture to our youth. This is
It's an interesting thought.
Yeah,
interesting idea, yeah. And yourself, Caoilfhionn?
Yeah, so I mean, I've never met so many ACCAs as I have here. So I would definitely welcome people to consider a bit broader. But I don't think it really matters what people study. Ideally, it should be something they're interested in. But what I would love to see more of is the diaspora regime, and more of an opportunity. Now we're having lots of young ACCAs or lawyers leaving the country and not coming back. It would be great to have a more focus on helping our young Mauritians go overseas for some, for a couple of years experience, and not just to the UK, Canada and France where they currently go, but to Nigeria, to Kenya, to South Africa.
Many go to America, many go to Canada,
Yeah.
many go to Australia.
Yeah.
So-
And those guys often don't come home. So the diaspora regime is a great one. I would love to see more of that because we have seen I've been in Mauritius now 7 years, and I have seen over the last couple of years a real brain drain of the youngsters. So I agree with what Robin says. With AI, like it's so hard to know what we're going to need to study, but I do think we need to have smart, business-minded people here who understand the challenges of doing business in Africa if we're going to grow as as an African center of excellence.
Okay, thank you. I'll come back to you, Robin. In terms of ESG, how important do you think ESG will be for the development of Africa in terms of attracting finance, in terms of Mauritius being a part of that value chain? Is it something which is a driver? Is it something which is, we're in this world where we're in, unfortunately it's climate change that everyone's talking about, it's the ozone layer. ESG is important. SDGs are here to stay, but how does that drive what you're doing? How does that impact the future growth of Africa?
Well, personally, I've seen conflicting trends now. It was all going very well. ESG was really developing as an essential label, essential standard. Everything had to be ESG compliant. Everything. And then you've got America. America now is undoing ESG. In fact, America, a lot of institutional investors are getting out of structures which focus on ESG because they tell you we could get much more higher returns elsewhere than to focus on ESG. So you asked me the question. I see those two trends. I see those for ESG, those against ESG. But we cannot stereotype. We cannot generalize. Last week we had a client, institutional investor from America, which insisted that the constitutive documents provide for only ESG compliant products. And so that's it. That's one way. On the other side, we've seen companies getting rid of their ESG checklist requirement. We don't have ESG as a subject itself. You've got environment, social, and governance. So all of these, those three letters have their multitude of components. So if you really sit down and look at all of these components, whether it's governance, whether it's social, and whether it's environmental, then you will see the real effect of the trend. And I really think today we cannot say, as of today, we cannot say where this will go.
Yeah. For me, it should rather be ESG. It should be GSE. We should be focusing on the governance first, the social, because that will be driven by the good governance. It will be better for the social environment, and the environment again it's a question of, well, if people have jobs and they think sustainability and they think long term, they'll do what's right for the environment. Rather than focusing on the environment first and then working backwards, I think it should be GSE rather than ESG. That's my personal view. Because governance is really what's going to reposition the continent, reposition Africa as it's repositioned Mauritius since independence. The governance aspect, showing that you can do it properly, showing that you can do it right, showing that you've got all the rules and regulations in place to protect investors' assets. And that, I think, will then create good actions, the right actions, which is then hopefully good for society.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and like Robert, I mean, a lot can be said on what's happening with ESG. To me, the label it was a buzzword for a long time. Who knows what's going to happen with it now? But we know that whatever is going to happen in Africa is going to require governance. I mean, the issue there is the young people. So it's the society. So whatever projects go in will have a massive issue on society. And a lot of the projects we're helping with have an environmental element as well. So I think that ESG, maybe not as a buzzword or as a sort of stamp, but it's still going to be critical in Africa. And that's another reason why Mauritius, as a topco or as a intermediary holdco for Africa,
Exactly.
is that because it's African.
Yeah,
If you're, let's say you're a DFI and you want to invest into an agricultural fund in Rwanda and Zambia, are you going to prefer to do it via an African country like Mauritius or via Luxembourg or Ireland? To me, Mauritius will always have a good, it just kind of ticks the aesthetics when you have anything focused on Africa. And a lot of purely African focused projects tend to be looking at ESG, whether officially or, just as whether as a buzzword or as part of the underlying intentions.
Thank you. Look, thank you both very much for your time today. I've got one final question for each of you. How do you, in your opinion, see that Caoilfhionn differentiates itself in how we offer our services to our clients and in some of the experiences that your clients have enjoyed through working with Caoilfhionn? What are the obviously you can get some anonymous feedback, but how do you think we differentiate ourselves from the many other service providers here, bearing in mind that we refer to ourselves as a global asset services company as opposed to a typical management company? But over to you. I don't want to put words into your mouth, so.
Well, from our side, we're always happy to introduce clients to Caoilfhionn because we know they'll be taken care of. We know we'll never have a client come back to us and say, why did you introduce us to those guys? They don't know what they're talking about. So I would say the quality of your people is extremely good. Your team are very knowledgeable and not... Sometimes management companies can have a bad reputation for just trying to sell people structures. And I definitely don't see that with Caoilfhionn. It's always about trying to get the right solution for a client, which might be, no, this isn't going to work for you. So yes, I would say the quality of your people, the client-focused approach rather than just trying to kind of land a sale, and also the fact that you've got global reach. So a client can come to you with an issue and you can help them in any of your jurisdictions. And you seem very kind of open as a firm, not siloed. So if someone talks to you, they actually have access to the whole Caoilfhionn global network.
Personally, we're agnostic. I'm agnostic. I happen to be based here in Mauritius, but I speak to my colleagues in Singapore, in Jersey, in Guernsey, in New York. So on a regular basis, so we are one Caoilfhionn in that sense. But the same question to you, please, Robin.
Yes, John. I think what I like is you guys have got seasoned professionals in your various departments. That brings in a lot of substance. Investors hate people who refer them to the next person, Nobody can give them an answer the first time. So I think you guys are pretty good at that. You guys employ good professionals, are experts at what you guys do, conscious of time saving, and no nonsense, really.
Thank you very much. Robin Mardemootoo, Caoilfhionn van der Veld, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John.